Hello everyone, today we are at Sarah's house again. She has a very special story. If you haven't watched her videos, please do. Sarah is a Holocaust survivor. Her parents escaped Europe with miracles. So she survived, and then she came to Israel in 1973 after the Yom Kippur War already broke out.
During
the Yom Kippur War.
It was December. It was really during.
Today we're here to interview Sarah because we know what happened on the 7th of October, the huge massacre.
30 days ago.
The terrorists came, 30 days ago, killed a lot of people, women, babies, elderly. And so people in Israel are talking about this is bringing back the Holocaust trauma again to the Israeli soil. And therefore we want to hear from Sarah how she sees the situation. What has she been hearing? Yeah.
I've been hearing a lot, and basically I'm always a very positive, optimist person. And in today's situation, I am sure we will win. I don't for a second think otherwise. I'm living in Jerusalem, which is relatively quiet. We've had a siren once or twice, but not. And I'm living in an assisted living, a residence for older people. So I'm very protected here, and everything is being taken care of.
We know that there are Holocaust people who were kidnapped. Can you describe, with your own experience, how that would be?
I'm sure that it's horrible, but I personally have an escape story. I'm a Holocaust survivor who was not in a camp. My father was in prison twice, not in a camp, in jails, and freed very rapidly by my mother. That's a whole story. So I cannot identify exactly with the people who were sitting in horrors in camps. And they hear these things that were done to people. It's just horrible. Because my story is a different type of story. But it's not the level of suffering of someone who, and I have friends here. So I imagine for them it's even harder. It makes them think it's come back. The thing is that we all know, as Jews, we have a long history of people just not liking us. And we have a lot of different things happening before the Holocaust. Our Jewish history is full of abuse and pogroms and attacks. And the few that survived the Holocaust and decided, I'll go back to my home in France or here. Some of the neighbors said, what? Hitler didn't get you? Bang! And they killed them. I don't know if you knew that. They actually killed them and the war was over. Why? Because they had stolen their home, were living very comfortably, and they didn't want this survivor to suddenly pop up. So the hatred is very big, and we have no explanation for it. And this is part of the hatred. And people who were actually in camps, I'm sure for them it's much, much harder than for me personally. I'm very aware of it. I've read and heard and have friends here. Unbelievable stories what they went through. And I'm sure it's years later. Israel is a state from 75 years. But it comes back. Now, what I wanted to tell you, very important to explain to you, is that we're not occupying. And when people say free Palestine, it's nonsense. There's no such thing. Palestine was never a country called Palestine. At the time that name was used, it was given, I think, by the British, or the British were in charge, or before the British. And it's a twist on the word Philistine. And when Israel became a state, Ben-Gurion gave us a new name, which is our name of Israel, which is from our Bible sources. And when people say Palestinians, it's a fictitious name, and there's no such a thing. It's a misuse of the term. At the time of the War of Liberation, the Arab people that attacked us from 3, 4, 5 countries were definitely sure they would win. So they told whatever Arabs happened to be living here, go away and you'll come back. And they went away, and they didn't come back because the country that won was Israel. There are 22 or perhaps more today Arab Muslim states all around. When those people were out of their homes, anyone could have taken them in. This is what Jewish people did with all the thousands and millions of Jews who were thrown out of Arab countries.
That's right.
We found them jobs and homes, and they are citizens, and they're part of the people, the generations that have built up the country. The Arabs chose not to do that. Now, the people in those camps had children and grandchildren. They kept them there, which was ridiculous. They should have been given an opportunity to move somewhere and make a living and have a life.
True.
And they call themselves Palestinians because before Israel, it was called, but there's no such thing as freeing Palestine. There's no Palestine to free.
Your grandparents were
My
also...
grandparents came when Hitler became in the German government. There was never a country called Palestine that had a government. I would like to ask these Palestinians, who was the president of Palestine? Who was the king? Anything? What money did they have? What books? Where did they have school? They didn't have any of that. They were living here as nomads, as living a little bit here or there in a time when this was not a country. And the United Nations decided to let the Jews have it, and the Arabs disagreed. So they created a war. They didn't want to accept it, and now they want it all back. It makes no sense if you know your history.
Exactly.
Now, yesterday I saw an interview of a woman who was screaming the terrible things that are being done to the Arabs in Palestine. So the man interviewing her said to her, the numbers are in proportion. He said to her, World War II, much more Germans were killed than British. Does that mean the British were wrong? So she starts saying in her ignorance that the British didn't bomb civilians. Yes, they did. Of course the British bombed Germany, and they didn't count how many. Because when you're fighting against evil, you have to defend yourself. And you can't count noses. You can't say, okay, we reached the same number, now we have to stop. Life doesn't, wars don't work like that. Just ignorance to get up and say, give us back Palestine. There's no Palestine to give back. It doesn't exist. It was never a country with a government.
About your grandparents, they were here.
My grandparents, there was a slow, steady influx of Jews running away from Europe where they were being mistreated, in Russia where there were pogromim. Before the Holocaust, way before, there was a trickle, there were a few, because this was always our holy country.
Yeah.
And they came and they sat in Jerusalem, they didn't have a living. Some other people came and gave them money to help them be here. And it was few, and a few more, and a few more. Now in 1933, my grandparents, who were Polish born but living in Germany, decided it's a good time to get out because Hitler had gone into the government, and they read what he wrote, and they heard what he said, and they understood that it wasn't going to be so great there. Nobody predicted the Holocaust, but they had enough incentive, with many others, to come to what was Palestine. Now, we had mail from them. They were living in Haifa, and the address on the mail said Haifa, Palestine. It was called that, but it wasn't a Palestine country. And many of the so-called Palestinians today aren't Palestinians. They come from other countries. Why do they come? Because Israel is developed beautifully and has succeeded, and there's work here. And with good hearts, the Israelis allowed them to come in and work. And now we discover that some of them, besides working, were doing spy work and went back and informed the terrorists exactly where we have a school and where we have a kindergarten, and how to get in here and what the code is for there, and I don't know what information they gave. So therefore today people are hesitant and question, and they certainly don't want to have a tremendous influx of jobs for them. It's the responsibility of the Arab countries, of their brothers and sisters, to care for them.
So we were talking about the Muslim lady who's cleaning here, and then you said her husband also works here. Do you feel
he doesn't work
different?
here? He works for Egged. She considers herself a Muslim Israeli.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So
There
it's
are people
the
like that.
mentality.
And she's not going to come next week instead of cleaning and attack me. She's not in that mentality.
Right.
But for us, we have to know how to know which is which, and that is not easy. Because someone who wants to do you evil isn't going to tell it to you.
That's right.
So we're in a difficult situation now. First, we have to win the war. And what will be afterwards with the labor. In the meantime, I understand we've already brought in some Chinese people who are looking to work to replace some of the workers that we've lost. Because in agriculture, first of all, a certain amount of foreign workers, not Palestinians, left. Because they didn't want to be in a country at war. That's their, and they have families. And it's their right to leave. Nobody's told them they have to stay. So we have a loss of labor, and specifically in agriculture. As I told you before, some soldiers saw plants and watered them till the owners came back. But to pick fruit that is ripe, we need labor.
That's true.
Now, there's a suggestion of using of some of our teenage kids when they didn't have school. Solutions will be found. All the problems will be solved. Of course, after so many towns had all their buildings destroyed or burned, we will need builders. And we won't be using Arab builders because we've lost our trust in them after this horrendous truck. And perhaps there'll be Chinese coming. Or other people who don't have enough work in their own countries.
So it sounds to me like you have a lot of energy, passion, because Israel now is in war. We need to win this. But what about other Holocaust survivors who are not, maybe not as strong as you are?
I don't personally know anyone who is very, very emotionally broken, but that probably exists. Because I know all the years I've heard stories. And whatever happened, even if afterwards it's explained to them, the initial blows are very deep inside somewhere. And some people feel this. So it's very nice that there are organizations visiting Holocaust survivors and being very encouraging. I've had visitors whom I don't know. They only come to me because they know I'm a survivor. And they bring me a little gift of a plant. A woman came, a very nice woman, baked me a challah.
Wow.
And they sit and talk with you for a while. And a young bunch of young students came on Friday with a list of names because some of our neighbors are, many aren't. And they went knocking on doors. My only complaint was I like to have the guests, but I'd like to know they're coming because I had plans to go do something. And they bring a little something. And what they're advertising is that they're coming with a hug and a small gift. Physically, nobody gave me a hug. I don't need a physical hug. But I'm also getting a tremendous support from my children, which I always had. And they managed to drop in and visit and tour. And I'm going to my daughter for the Shabbat in 2 weeks. This week she has a full house with her mother-in-law, with her carer. And life goes on. We encourage each other. Now, people who run this place are very much interested in making sure nobody goes and gets depressed here. So they bring in extra programs with music and open talk. And our manager is a wonderful guy, and he goes from table to table when we're eating dinner and checking with everybody and asking what's happening. If you come in the afternoon or you see people sitting around, everybody's talking positively. This one had a granddaughter who just got engaged to a soldier. So they didn't have a big engagement, but they wanted to get engaged. Somebody else had a wedding.
Wow.
It was scheduled, and I had a baby born the first day of the war.
Wow.
A week later, he had a circumcision party.
Life goes on.
It was very small because some of the people couldn't come. Now, last week a woman died, but even though we had the war, we had to relate to the fact that she had died at an advanced age and give her the proper honor.
Wow. I also see that you are knitting for...
I'm crocheting.
Crocheting
yes.
for the soldier.
Yes.
Yeah.
I can't go participate. I get all kinds of invitations. But I can sit and crochet. Somebody asked me for 2 hats. I said, wait. First, my own get if they want. My own grandsons who are out there. Because we're going into winter.
Yeah, that's right. Is there anything else that you would like our audience to know that Israel is at war and how the Holocaust survivors
at war,
feel?
And we won't stop until we clear this out because we cannot have a ceasefire. When they say ceasefire, they cease, we cease, and they fire. It's as simple as that. It always comes back again and back again. So this time, officially, the message is that we have to have a total finish with this. It'll be costly, but there's no choice. We can't every few months, every year or two, again and again. Who tolerates that on your border?
Yeah.
Sneaking in and killing people, taking pot shots off.
So
they are not fighting to liberate Palestine. They are fighting to kill Jews. That is the purpose. And it says so in their charter.
Yeah.
It says it in black and white. We have to understand our Western mentality isn't suited to dealing with these people.
How do you compare the Yom Kippur War that you experienced?
This is much worse.
This is much worse.
Never had anything like this happen. I saw a program where they were interviewed Arab terrorists that they have captured. Israelis were interviewing them. And one of them said he was promised a house and $10,000. Now our soldiers are promised a salary.
Yeah.
And their places, if they're working, the places will pay them their salary. They're not out in the street with nothing coming in.
Yeah.
But nobody promises them $10,000.
And a house.
And a house.
Yeah.
For each one that you kill. If you kill 2, you get 2 houses.
Yeah, I remember watching a video of a terrorist calling his parents, say, "Oh, I killed 10 Jews."
Yes. No, I also saw a picture. Abbas has a house, a mansion. A lot of the money that people keep giving to help doesn't go where they think.
Yeah, the leaders of Hamas and PA are super rich.
No, super. And they sent a picture, a palace,
Yeah.
4 floors. Now, we're not responsible for another states, another places, water, electricity. They're supposed to worry about themselves. They were given money to fix the electric lines. They didn't fix it because they used the money.
Yeah.
And now they're yelling there's no fuel. They have fuel.
Yeah.
There are pictures of the fuel they have. Tremendous amount. But they're using it for their weapons and to send more missiles. So people who need fuel to warm their houses as winter approaches are asking poor people, they don't have what. It's a ridiculous situation.
What can people outside Israel do for Israel? How can we help?
First of all, we ask everyone to pray. We very much believe in the power of prayer. I don't know if you saw the picture of this woman whose daughter was in Gaza and was released. And what she had done is incredible. She actually took into her home a Sefer Torah. And she did it. We have a ceremony when we bake challah, which is a type of bread that we use on the Sabbath. And we have a ceremony where you take off a piece, which is supposed to be in honor of God. And she did it and made extra special prayers. And she made a whole thing, and they filmed her. And her daughter came out. Okay, maybe it's a coincidence. Or maybe God blessed her. You can decide whatever you want. But we believe the first thing we ask people is for prayer. The second thing is, my daughter has 4 soldiers, and she's in touch with all of them, and they all said, we don't need anything. We have enough equipment. We have enough food. If you want to donate to help the people whose homes were destroyed.
All right, yeah.
That's very important, because there are thousands and thousands of people. Whole towns were destroyed. Then we're going to build them up again. They're the people who need help.
Okay.
And they're very sad stories. There's a baby in Gaza whose parents have killed. He has 2 brothers alive because they were hiding in a closet. But who's taking care of a 4-month baby if he's in Gaza? A baby needs care. And who knows what they're doing with all those people. This is very important to us to have them freed. So we want pressure on the governments, not to pressure us for a ceasefire. There will be no ceasefire until everything is cleaned up. But to pressure them, the Red Cross, the International Red Cross, should be allowed to visit them, to see what's happening with them.
Exactly.
They're not functioning. They're not doing their job.
They're probably under threat of Hamas, and they cannot do what they should be doing.
And the UN isn't doing its job. So what we ask, if you ask me what we ask, first of all, whoever believes in prayer should pray. And if you pray in the middle of the night, that's also very important, because that's when a lot of the action is taking place.
That's right, yeah.
Yes. And if you want to donate, if you have the ability to donate, there are all kinds of organizations that donate and that help the people who have been wrecked out of their homes and out of their businesses.
And
eventually the government will help them, but more, they're going to need much more help.
Yeah, and also give pressure to the government.
Yeah, and a lot of these
releasing
people,
the hostages.
A lot of these people are going to need psychological help because they're completely traumatized by the horrors they saw.
For sure, yeah. Well, Sarah, thank you for this special interview.